Chris Akhavan acquired PlayFirst and closed the deal 2 weeks ago. Glad to be in their group and family, great group of people. And we'll hear more about PlayFirst and what they're doing under Blue's umbrella.
Mickey Maher, VP of Business Development for Everyplay. Everyplay is now part of Unity. Everyplay is basically a technology that records mobile gameplay and allows it to be shared to YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. Then we also have a Unity Ads product, which is a video ad product that can help you monetize your traffic either through a incentivized view or a non-incentivized skippable interstitial.
And my name is, well, it's loud. My name is Chris Akhavan. I'm the president of publishing at Blue Mobile. We make games like Deer Hunter and Frontline Commando, and as Marco mentioned, we recently bought his old company, so we make Diner Dash as well.
Hello, I'm Chris Mills. I am the president of Hitcents. We're a mobile business app and game developer, and I run our Shanghai office. We also have offices here in China, here in America.
Perfect. So, we saw a lot of good cool stuff during the keynote this week, during WWDC. What I kind of want to talk about tonight, and what I think is going to be of most interest to everybody here, is some of the big app discoverability increases to the App Store. And we'll walk through a couple of those, but just off the top of my head, the Explore tab, the fact that there's now video previews, the fact that all of these new things are now available to developers, at least in the iOS App Store, that weren't earlier. And because of that, I think it's going to become much easier, or possibly easier, for app developers to increase their discoverability within the App Store. So we're going to talk about that. If we have time, we might touch upon Metal. We might touch upon Swift. We're going to figure this out, guys. But let's jump right into it here. My first question for the panel is, on the app discoverability side, when it came to everything that Apple was putting out, what struck you? What was the first thing that made you say, that's really cool, and I'm curious of how they're going to bring that out? I
guess I can say we were all discussing, I don't know if we said it was really cool, but we were discussing the Explorer tab in general and how it, before it was the nearby apps, and before that it was the Genius, and before that it was something else. So really everything that's ever been in that spot from the Apple standpoint has not been successful. So we're very excited about it. But it does kind of give the developers or the users exploring the apps to kind of drill down deeper into the subcategories, and they've added a lot of new different categories inside of there to hopefully get our apps discovered a little bit easier than they are now.
Yeah, because obviously in the game space, we've had subcategories in the App Store for a long, long time. And the subcategories existed on the back end for apps, but they haven't really been public.
The biggest thing I actually noticed, we were checking out iOS 8 on Chris's iPad, was that in the Explore tab, a lot of the content is actually editorially curated by Apple. So that's probably going to be placing even more importance on editorial featuring throughout the store.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say I'd call this exciting, but something that was an obvious change that was needed was adding video to the App Store. I think that's an obvious change and a great change, especially for paid apps. I also think that they need to do more with video. I think if you look at YouTube, gaming videos are the #2 vertical on YouTube right now. Eventually, I think they should add some sort of user-generated video content to really show authentic gameplay. Produced trailers do so much, but authentic gameplay can really attach a user to a game that they're truly interested in.
I totally agree. Let's talk about app bundles for a second, because a couple of us were chatting about this earlier. That was the moment where I said, okay, every developer who was in the room during the keynote grabbed the developer next to him and said, hey man, do you want a bundle? And obviously, I mean, the biggest thing that we were chatting about is the fact that it doesn't seem like it's still totally clear whether we can bundle within, from developer to developer. It looks like it's got to be mostly inside of the developers. I thought that was really interesting. I think it gives a lot of power back to developers. So if anybody has a thought on that, but I want to tie it into advertising otherwise. Yeah.
The comment I was going to make about bundling, and I think this is also true for some of the multi-screen capabilities that they brought in with handoff, is that they're reacting to realities within the market, right? It's very clear that some of the bundling apps with which they had problems in the past were reflecting real consumer demand and developer demand in the market. So that's one area where they're reacting to that need. With the handoff piece, we're exposed daily to advertisers who are asking us for multi-screen solutions, and so the connection between the desktop and the tablet and the phone and sort of having an integrated experience, we hope at least will be one that can be carried across in advertising as well.
I think on the app bundling side, if you have a large portfolio that you can sort of combine, part of this, a big part of mobile gaming is live ops. And when you do live ops, you're really working on different sort of episodic events and holidays and Mother's Day and so forth. You can really do relevant app bundling and do sort of aggressive pricing to get the installs and then leverage the installs for other cross promotion. And we've been trying to do that on the App Store for some time. PlayFirst had close to 50 games on iOS only, and we wanted to do a number of app bundling. So I think this kind of really open up new opportunities for not only revenue generation, but bring additional installs to the whole network.
I was going to say, my take on bundling is it seems like it's going to be much more, or maybe only relevant for paid apps. On the in-app purchase side, I think the most interesting thing that was announced was the parental permission. So kids can finally ask their parents for permission to make an in-app purchase. So that's going to be a great addition for free-to-play games.
So tying all of that in from an advertising standpoint, app bundles to me seem like a very easy way to begin pushing out not just obviously your single app downloads, but to actually be advertising directly towards the bundle. And to be affecting not just one app's download, but multiple apps download. And so in my mind, it almost slightly tweaks the regular mobile strategy that we've had previously of going for user acquisition and focusing on one app, one thing, and then trying to cross-promote amongst and kind of inside everything. That was my initial reaction as far as to how it can kind of start to trickle into the advertising space. But would love to know if you guys have other thoughts in regards to that.
I guess I'll piggyback off what Chris said. I mean, really, it's going to be primarily, it seems like, for paid apps. And I would like to see that you could possibly put free apps in with it and kind of bundle those things together, but I'm not sure how that's all going to turn out. So I think we're just going to have to wait till Apple releases a lot of this stuff so we can see, can we put in-app purchases in with it? Can we do cross-developer accounts? Or can we put free apps in with the bundles to maybe if you download our free app, you'll get a discount on one of our paid apps. So if we've got an app that's normally $2.99 and we want somebody to also download our free app, we'll give it to them for $1. So we're getting that extra install. So those are kind of the things that are going to come to play over the next, I guess, few weeks or months.
The interesting thing that this raises is that the level of sophistication that any one of our clients need to have in order to make a decision between showing someone a piece of IAP, cross-promoting a different title, showing an advertisement, or now pushing them to a bundle, and sort of taking it up to the next level, right? It's clear that this is going to open up the need for even further data analytics, decision-making capability, and sort of how you're going to monetize that traffic.
One thing that immediately pops into my mind is that the quality user would greatly change. If you're downloading the whole app bundle, you get 5 apps. Well, how you determine a high quality user suddenly changes because they may suddenly be super into this one app and shifting away from another.
Yeah, I think though, again, to their point, that this is pretty much only relevant for paid apps. So once you get a user to pay for a paid app, whether it's directly or via bundle, I don't think they measure the quality like free-to-play games do. So I think that's less of a challenge or an issue. But you're absolutely right, but I just think it becomes less of an issue with the paid app.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's talk about free apps for a second. Obviously, this, like we've been talking about, is really focused on paid. Of the app discoverability aspects that have been increased, what do you think is most helpful on the free app side?
For me, I really like that they're now surfacing App Store results within Spotlight. So if somebody's searching for an app that they don't have, it actually can pop up in that placement. I was actually personally more excited about the more retention-focused features they launched, like interactive push notifications and widgets, which I think both kind of provide good opportunities to have more very light engagement with your users, but on a more regular basis.
I think probably sort of trending searches, when you do a search and you can see some relevant search trends, and similar to what happens on Twitter, you can see the search dynamics, and there might be an opportunity to optimize it from a developer perspective, so you sort of pop up there.
And you know, one thing I think is going to be interesting is, you know, giving all these new features to people, we're going to see developers, all of us developers, come up with some creative ideas that nobody thought about. You know, you talk about widgets. How can you use a widget to indicate some of your game, you know, your game information, or how can you use a notification to give somebody a choice to actually interact within the game without going into it? There's going to be so many new things that are going to come to play and come to light from this that, you know, we're just scratching the surface on it.
No, I was gonna agree and say the lifeblood of the freemium game is engagement, right? And the fact that we have all of these new touch points that need to be managed opens up a ton of new opportunities for a sophisticated game designer to engage with their audience. So.
Yeah, my overall iOS 8 sort of announcement and feature set was really nothing dramatic, but a lot of sort of consolidated improvements across the whole user experience and developer tools and other stuff.
You're taking the words out of my mouth, because my next question was, on iOS 8, is this really a game changer? Does this really shift everything? I mean, we've talked about there's definitely going to need to be new techniques, there's definitely going to be new strategies, but is it really a full rethink on this, or is it a shift towards something of a larger rethink in the future?
I mean, when I looked at it, when we looked at Chris's iPad, it's fairly similar. I think relationship with Apple is still going to matter a lot for discoverability. I don't think this helps indie devs that much, if at all. And I think that's the biggest complaint with the App Store is how do good indie games without large advertising budgets get discovered? The main feature page is still pretty much the same. They did add the Explore page for more feature opportunity, but I just wonder how many users actually will click through to the Explore tab, search that page out and find or discover apps that way. Probably some, but I don't think it's going to move the needle as much as they would hope.
Yeah, I agree with Mickey. I think a lot of the changes are kind of be more in the direction of big get bigger, right? Like the Explore tab heavily emphasizing editorially featured content, trending searches, giving more real estate to things like Candy Crush that people search a lot for. Yeah. There wasn't a whole lot in the way of discovering smaller or indie apps.
What I would say is that the fundamental model of Apple controlling the entire ecosystem has not changed, right? But I think that with a couple of their features, they've recognized that they need to allow people or developers greater access into sort of other parts of the OS. So the extensibility features are the ones that come to mind where, clearly that is looking at other ecosystems that are more open and possibly giving developers more chances to control their own future. But it's still a closed system, there's no question.
Brian, if we can geek out a little bit, I thought the more interesting part was really Metal and Swift, because OpenGL ES has been around for many, many years. And as you know, you have NVIDIA has their CUDA, and ATI has Mantle, and Microsoft announced Drake X12, and now you have Apple's own solution, which is Metal. The idea, it really, I'm sure it's going to get adopted because, like he said, say, vertically integrated in a closed system, and you should see improvement on the power consumption, and obviously 3D rendering and everything else should be much faster.
Yeah, just to add to the geeking out on that for a second, when it came to Swift, I thought the easy debugging aspect of that was just awesome. The fact that
Copilot.
Yeah.
I guess just to close out that app discovery piece of this, I do feel like maybe there's 5 or 6 more apps that might get discovered with some of the new features that they had. But just since I do a lot of work in China, to give you guys an idea of that, it's a whole lot worse there. And basically they just drive the content and say, this is what you're going to download, this is what you're going to play, and this is what you're going to spend money with. So compared to, and we're going to take 80% of whatever you make. So compared to that market, this is, it's nice, but it is still heavy relationship side, and then, either huge trending like a Flappy Bird explosion for some reason.
Sounds like a traditional publishing business.
Yeah.
Shelf space, relationships.
Yeah.
So we're actually based in Beijing, and you probably have similar experience. What I would say though is that in a market that is highly fragmented, there are probably more options for indie devs to find, alternative ways to sort of drive traffic to their business. When you have a sort of fully top-down hierarchical system with one organization controlling the featured page and sort of everything that flows from that, there's a lack of competition there, right? At least it's less interesting.
Yes, I do agree with that in a sense, but you still, any big titles that come out will be across 90% of all of the channels, and then they'll be pushed really hard. So, it's I guess both places is very heavy relationship oriented.
We've been talking about how this might not move the needle for a lot of developers. I think mostly on the free-to-play side, I think a couple of the tweaks they made will help paid developers a little bit more. We mentioned the bundling. I think that's geared towards paid developers. I also think the video stuff is more geared towards helping paid developers, because when I wanted to decide on a game, it's a free game, I'm just going to download it and I'm going to try it. With a paid game, the decision process is a lot deeper, and I think video will help high-quality paid games generate a lot more downloads, just because a user can experience the game, they can see what they're getting into before they buy it.
I think from probably a developer standpoint here, a lot of us developers would love to be able to do paid games more. We love high-quality games. We love spending the time and effort to put in there. Unfortunately, the majority of the money's not there, so we don't have the choice. We fight with our developers every day because they say, I don't want to put that in the game. I just want it to be fun. I just want people to play. We're like, well, it's free to download. We've got to make money some way. So I think these things helping the paid side ultimately can help more developers do premium games in the long run.
I know a few indie developers factually that they built a great game. It probably should have been a paid app, but they forced free-to-play into it because they know they can't make money as a paid app, and then it bombed because free-to-play didn't work. So anything that can help discoverability and driving installs for paid games is probably great for the ecosystem.
Well, that always seemed like one of the major problems, and almost a trend in some way, where especially indie developers, small developers, they start to pay, especially about a year ago, they'd start to create a game, they'd suddenly take a deep look at the App Store and say, oh, I can't actually put, I can't put this out as a paid game, but I can't get really good traction. And that actually does tie into one other thing I want to talk about, because the other issue that we've always had is being able to get beta testers and good beta testers. And now with the Test Flight Edition, that changes for a lot of people.
I guess I can talk about that. We have been using Test Flight for many years, and now we can't put any of our Android apps on it. So we are not very thrilled with this change because
there is that problem. Yeah.
There is that problem. So I don't know enough about it, and maybe some people here do, but I really hope that the new Test Flight app will allow us to push updates to the content, notify people of updates, do their updates, things that Test Flight has not allowed us to do in the past. But there's a huge market that's going to open up for this whole Android side that needs to be filled.
Yeah, from our perspective, we switched to TestFairy. It's on the Android side, and actually, again, it's not a paid advertising for them. It tends to be a lot more much easier to work with. You don't have to have an SDK, and also you get some of the heat maps and so forth. So from our team's perspective, sort of managing both test flight and test rate has been local games?
I think for us, test flight's going to be nice in being able to get more qualitative feedback from valuable players, but it's not going to replace the need to do a proper beta in countries like Canada and New Zealand, etc. Because ultimately with beta, we're trying to recreate a natural environment and acquire a broad range of users and get a sense of what the game's KPIs are going to be. And you won't be able to do that if you're just bringing in really valuable players that you know are going to like the game.
So with everything that's come out, we kind of talked about the fact that a lot of this affects paid games, not so much free games. Is there anything that came out that makes us kind of take a step back, or is it really just kind of same as always when it comes to the free game market?
I think metal was the most important thing that came out. I don't know if we want to talk about this.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, we're still on discoverability, we can wait, but
We can jump into metal
I mean,
right now. This is our segue. This is our official transition into metal.
I just think it's Apple's positioning themselves for the ability to have AAA type of games being built on the platforms, which is good for all game developers. It means they can build a higher quality game, probably get users to pay more engaged, etc. So I think that's the biggest thing to come out of all this by far.
Yeah, I mean, the biggest disadvantage that iOS folks always had is that there was that middleware problem. And obviously removing that, it fixes a lot of it, which is the great thing about metal. Do you want to jump in, or no? Okay.
I was going to say, for us, we're a very cross-platform company. So I think Metal is awesome, but it does present some challenges if it's important for you to be on iOS, Android, other platforms. So it'll be interesting to see how developers manage that potential fragmentation issue.
Cool.
Yeah, I guess to echo Chris's point, as developers, we're kind of limited to the lowest common denominator across devices. So I'm excited to see that Unity is doing the port connection with the Metal system, and I think there's a lot there. I also say that I do think there's a huge future in apps for more mid-core type games, especially in the Western markets. We've been playing casual games so long, and I think there's a lot of players out there that are interested in investing more time and energy into a game. And so I think having the graphics that Metal will offer can give people the ability to kind of tap into a lot of those markets that we really haven't seen a lot from.
Yeah, I think the Metal's, the biggest handicap is really cross-platform issue, because you'll have something on Android front, Microsoft has again DirectX 12. On the other hand, we have to find a way to move beyond OpenGL. Right? It's not memory efficient, doesn't do multi-threading, rendering isn't very good, and power consumption is horrible. So there has to be a solution.
Yeah, we're kind of seeing I'll be honest, there's a lot of features released with iOS that Google's had. So we've seen them catch up in places and move forward, and we're kind of always moving this needle a little bit further and hoping to get to the place to where we can develop a lot of this, at a high level. And at one point we can develop it one time and it work on PC, console, phone, everywhere. That's what we're getting to, but it just takes one step at a time.
Just a question, but how much do you think Apple cares about cross-platform? Do you think they're positioning themselves to be the game development platform of choice, where if you want to build a great game, you have to go to Apple? Or do you think they listen to the complaints of game developers about the cross-platform aspect? I'm just curious, what do you think?
No, it's a great question. I mean, if you look at what they're doing, what they've always done is they take the best things that are out there and then they assimilate it into theirs. So a lot of the chat features that they added, these are just features that WeChat and Kakao and Line and WhatsApp has had for a long time. And so I do feel like they are very much positioning themselves as the kind of the global provider. And the fact that they are tied in with the hardware, even Tim Cook said it in his keynote speech about being the solution provider for the hardware, the platform, the software. I mean, it's huge, but there's too much diversity out there in the world for anybody, I think, to just kind of let that go, to say, we're just going to just pick this because it's the best. A lot of people just won't pick it just because they don't want to be tied into that.
But if Chris is building the best first-person shooter that has ever been on a tablet, and Apple allows that, but Google's technology hasn't necessarily caught up, I think that's kind of a little bit of the reasoning behind this, to kind of drive those type of game experiences and developers like Blue to build something solely and exclusively for that platform.
Yeah, and I think that's becoming harder and harder, because if you look at how many new developers we've added this year and how many new Apple store managers we've added this year, we've probably like doubled our developers across the world, and they've probably added like 10 store managers. So I agree with you 100%. It's just going to continue to make things tougher for everybody.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that was part of the rationale for what they did put out. And I very much expect to see some really awesome high-end games come out because of that. They're iOS only.
Right. I agree.
On the other hand, you can have Unity. I think Unity, Unreal, and Crytek announced they're supporting Metal, and when you do cross-platform, you'll have some level of abstraction when you go. But if you're on the iOS side, at least you can really sort of pedal to the metal and write very low-level code and optimize the rendering and shading and stuff like that. But you'll let the Unity handle cross-platform optimization.
Okay, I have one other thing that I want to jump into, but before we do that, I do want to open it up for any questions that people have. So if you've got questions, raise your hand and I will come find you with a mic. Any questions? This is the most silent audience I've ever seen in my entire life. They're all terrified. They're just like, no, please don't ask me. All right, fine. Yes?
Just your thoughts versus Metal versus WebGL, and why you would develop it. I mean, it sounds like the issue is cross-platform. So what would be the advantages to Metal versus WebGL in the development of your game if you are going cross-platform?
I think it's more like OpenGL versus Metal, OpenGL versus Mantle and CUDA and DirectX, really. OpenGL hasn't really optimized. You guys probably know Apple promoted OpenCL as a compute language, and nobody, even Apple, didn't use it, so it didn't really help the community. So we need a solution to really take it from OpenGL and beyond. And it's not clear to me that NVIDIA or ATI can push a new standard, but Apple has the closed ecosystem that can really push Metal. And again, Metal will be a low-level API that you can write to very optimized code if you want to, but not everybody can handle it, frankly. So you can leave it up to Unity and others to optimize certain stuff for you. But for what we're doing, the trade-off wouldn't be between WebGL versus Metal. It would be OpenGL versus Metal.
Hi, I have a question for each of you, based on in Beijing, China. Okay, so the first thing is, how about the WeChat? Because most people in China use WeChat, and how about the connection and the collaborate with the game and the WeChat? And second question is, because it's vision China, like how Apple will do, or like how developers can protect themselves from copying, others will steal your idea, change your format, then they launch some apps similar to yours. Thank you.
Okay, so those were both really good questions. The first question was about WeChat. So WeChat is owned by Tencent, which is the largest internet company in China. They're very protective. They do have an open SDK, so you can actually share information with your friends. We've used it before. We have one of our apps we integrated with WeChat, and so you can draw a picture, it'll take a screenshot and share it. But they do have a lot of limits. They don't allow you to get friend lists like Facebook would, or in China, Sina Weibo or Tencent Weibo will let you. So they are, if you talk to any developer in China, there's really just no way around it. I think they've opened it up to 3 companies ever that can really access the core WeChat APIs. Your second question was about how to protect yourself from being copied. So there are, obviously piracy is a huge issue. That's the reason that brought us to China. We had over 18 million illegal downloads of our paid app in China. and we noticed it through our analytics. We were kind of watching it and wondering where the cash was, and realized it was never coming. So that was because it was stolen, and it was mostly stolen on Android. But there are a lot of illegal iOS ports there. So you have several things going on. One where people just plug a phone into the USB at the train station, and it'll just load the app right on there. The other ones they sell, they actually have a software you can put on your computer, and you can download on a non-jailbroken cell phone. You can actually download any paid app. So what I try to tell, what I try to tell people is, try to be as graded as you can with your apps. Try to make them people feel kind of special, that it's not just like any other app, and then maybe they'll be more willing to download it. But really, you've just got two different kinds of people. The people that are just going to download, I know we hire all Chinese. The people that only download the free ones, they don't have an iOS account. They have an iPhone, they don't have an iOS account, and so they're never ever going to pay for anything. So you just kind of have to let those people go.
I think that the generic comment about gaming generally, right, is you can't be afraid to put something out there and have it copied. I mean, it happens all the time, whether it's 2048 or any number of other titles, right? What we say to our partners is that regardless of whether there's a piracy issue in China, there's massive demand for the content that's being produced by developers worldwide. And so we've actually engaged in publisher relationships there where we say, look, the installed base of 18 million pirated downloads represents an opportunity to do an update in which, if you work with the right distribution channels, you can convert those pirated downloads into actual downloads into paying customers. I think it's complicated, but I still think very well worth the risk.
And I think what we tell people all the time is if your app can be successful in China, it's already being pirated. So our company does actually do piracy reports for people where we will go and research what users say about your app, how many downloads you have across the different stores. And if you have a location in China, there are some protection things you can go through, some processes you can go to prove that you own it and get things removed. And those things are getting better every day. So it's a battle that people have been dealing with, and it continues to get better. So.